Good evening, everybody. Good evening to all of those of you joining us here in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. For another Solutions Exchange event. And everybody who is joining us from all around the country, welcome. We are glad to have you here. And we will look forward to joining you all in this conversation as we figure out some things. My name is Phillips. I am the Publius Fellow for Public Discourse here at Braver Angels. I am honored for the invitation by the Braver Angels DC Alliance Solutions Exchange Committee to help run this event. There are a few things I enjoy more than debates and depolarization, and so having depolarizing debates about debates and depolarization is one of the few things that I get to do all of those things on. So thank you guys for having me here. And everybody here from the Braver Angels DC Alliance, thank you for all the hard work that you do as volunteers. We couldn't do this without all of you. Tonight's discussion, tonight's forum is going to be on a subject that is very near and dear to the hearts of a lot of us. The question of how different kinds of discourse, different kinds of dialogue, and different kinds of debate have related to the mission and purpose of Braver Angels and our associated movements. And we're going to be honing in specifically on the concept of debate itself. Now, we're using the term debate pretty broadly here. So we will think about the Braver Angels debates in some context. We'll think about just the concept of debate more broadly. And we will see what kind of ground we can cover. Now, let me introduce those who are with us. And I prepared a little bit of a intro for you too. Prepare for trouble and make it double, to protect the world from devastation, to unite all peoples within our nation, to denounce the evils of truth and love, to extend our reach to the stars above. Jessie is the Braver Angels. Jessie Mannisto is the chair of the Braver Angels Debates Committee here in the DC Alliance. She has previously served as the editor of a delightful magazine called Third Factor. She has a long background in the intelligence community. She's a vet, and she does all kinds of fascinating stuff in various heterodox intellectual communities. Thank you for being here, Jessie.
Thank you for having me.
James Coan is the Blue co-chair of the Braver Angels DC Alliance and has been the chief mind behind the Solutions Exchange program. He has served as an energy consultant for a long time, especially doing energy transition issues. And in the depolarization community, not only does he wear various hats inside Braver Angels and all sides, but he is currently in the process of setting up a new nonprofit that will soon be a part of the Braver Partners Network, called More Like Us, and we're excited to be working with them. So thank you for being here too, James. Team Rocket blasts off at the speed of light. Surrender now, we're prepared to fight. Meow, that's right. So thank you guys for being here and for entertaining all this. So with that, let's start talking about the Braver Angels debates and the debating process in general. I believe our two panelists have prepared a little bit of thinking on this. So James, let's start with you. Do debates depolarize?
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, I don't think I can match your skills. Yeah.
I didn't make it up. I didn't make it up. I played cross.
Okay, well, I can't memorize poetry like you. So first of all, thank you for coming out. It's very nice night outside. So thanks for staying inside rather than enjoying the nice weather. Thank you, everyone online. And I just also want to thank Anne Claire and Randy and Paul and Dolphin, Jessie, Luke, and Elizabeth. So got a big team here helping to put this on. Okay, so do debates depolarize? So I'll start with kind of three, punchy statements and kind of dive into them a little bit. So one is, it relates to debates, but with a lot of different kinds of discourse. In terms of whether it depolarizes, the best question I think to ask is, to what extent does it increase or decrease perceptions of threat about those in the other political camp? Then the second point is debate, if we think about it very typically, although we'll realize that this one is a little different, is often about division. And it can be difficult to reduce those perceptions of threat when people are often encountering what's most concerning to them in the context of a debate. We'll see that it can be better than that, but that's sort of the default. And then Jessie wanted me to potentially throw a grenade. So the grenade that I would throw is that this focused on a given debate sometimes is a little moot, right? I don't think that debates themselves or workshops can scale sufficiently. So yes, we could haggle over exactly whether something works or not, but I will embrace my inner TikToker and say, it's really about content generation, about having moments that can be spliced and put together, trying to be made viral, that lots of other people can potentially see. Because just relying on actual in-person experiences, I don't think can actually reach enough people. So I could go into those points more, but I'll just end it off with that.
So thank you, James. With that, Jessie, the debates depolarized.
Yeah, though I don't necessarily disagree with most of what James said. Let me step into the role of evangelist for debate, which I have found is a surprisingly hard throw for a lot of people, for the reasons, the idea of threat, and that this, people do not come in assuming that this is intuitively a tool for depolarization. And I think some of that goes back to maybe what you may have experienced with high school debate, whether you were in it or witnessing it, where the point is just demolish the other side, win, and it's all about the intellect, right? So there's a lot of different systems of debate. I came to this late. I wasn't in high school debate. I wish I were, but such is life. It's never too late to try something new. And so here I am doing this. A little bit about my background. I'm sort of a heterodox purple type, but I wear a red badge here at Brave Angels for various reasons. I do have a blue background. I've ticked off both sides, and I have been canceled. So I'm a little nervous speaking up. Going to the Brave Angels convention, I know that other people out there watching this may relate to that. So it's in that context that I found debate really healing. And I would say that the key to that is that it isn't about the intellect, at least here in the system that we use in Brave Angels. It's a lot more about emotions. There's head and heart, right? They have to be working together. You'll go wrong if you skew too far toward either. In fact, I would say over-intellectualizing and over-emotionalizing are both polarizing things, right? You trample people's feelings, you lose them. Argue over facts, no, that's not getting you anywhere. But of course, we can use emotion to stir people up and clickbait and all of that. So it's about walking that line, but it really is in our system designed to focus on those feelings. Let people be heard, let them tell their story, and as you are in the audience listening to people, we hope that you'll participate with curiosity. You self-selected into a Brave Angels debate, so probably that's a good sign to begin with. Though we have had some people. There was a student in Gettysburg College on the campus when we were at the convention, and he wasn't know what was going on, but he walks in, and that's a rule in Brave Angels debates. Whoever comes in is allowed to participate. And so he's like, "Yeah, I'm not part of Brave Angels, but I want to participate." And he didn't quite fit this. He was kind of mad about the resolution, but even that was really interesting to listen to. Why was he angry? What did he bring to this topic? And I haven't done so many of those. I remember them, and I feel like I understand the person and why they hold the view that they do. And so that's really the spirit that underlies just specifically the Brave Angels system. There's no winners or losers. We don't take a vote at the end to see whether the resolution passes or not. It's just to hear those stories. I can go on, but I'm gonna stop there.
Well, so interestingly, both of you just cited emotions as one of the primary reasons why you believe that debates are a force for depolarization. and are not necessarily a force for depolarization. And I want to go a little bit into that because emotions are complicated things, as anybody who has ever dated anybody can tell you. And there's a way, I think, that you guys might both be right on different aspects of that, but I'd like you to go a little bit deeper into that, if you don't mind. And Jessie, if you don't mind starting on that, what is the emotional thing that comes out in the context of either Great Rangel's debates or debates more broadly? And how does that do what we are calling depolarization? And then James, after that, tell us your understanding of why that either, I mean, to what degree you agree with that or not, and then why you come to a different approach. So just
Yeah. All right. You've seen the movie Inside Out, Pixar, right? There's 5 primary emotions, and sadness, anger, fear, disgust, joy. I think those are the 5, right? The one that I think is most problematic for us in a debate will be anger and fear. Maybe fear especially. No, maybe anger. I'm gonna be neutral on those. They're both problems, and we're trying to get over both of them. And so by being in this space where you can, I mean, dare I call it, for the reds and blues out there, it's a safe space and it's a brave space. And so you can, you have a chance to come in and directly confront those emotions. And I want to mention the idea of disagreement. We were talking about disagreement as the thing that is right there in our face that we're talking around when we're discussing whether this depolarizes or not. Are we going to double down on our disagreements, or are we going to sort of see what the other side thinks? The thing to take away on that note is that we're never going to stop having disagreements. What we need is to deal with our emotions around those disagreements. And in a really super affectively polarized environment, that's going to be really hard to do. And so you just have to practice. You have to have the chance to sit in a room with people who might think something different from you, but they're not going to call you names. They're going to listen. They're there because they actually want to know why you think that. And why you think what you do. And you may even have the opportunity to have someone tell you, hey, I never thought of it that way before. Title of a book that you may have heard of. And so, yeah, I think that's a really healing experience. At least it has been for me, and I know it has been for other people. And so the fear gets managed. You have people have your back. People reach out across aisles to you. So just being in this culture where we can confront those emotions is how I would say that ties in.
James, why is Jessie wrong? Debate her down.
Oh, it's. I mean, I would also focus on fear. The part that we disagree on the most, as we've talked about this, is actually the scaling. It's not about the debate. It's that I don't think people need to be in that room to actually depolarize. Because if that's the case, this game is lost. There won't be enough people to go into the room. Then the numbers don't work. If you have this group of people, say you get 10 people, you have say 100 events like this every single day, and you want to have that number of events to reach everyone who's voted, like in 2020, you need over 400 years in the US to reach everyone once. If that's what we're going to try to do, I think that's going to fail. So that's actually where we disagree. Now, the question is about emotions. And so then I don't know if we disagree all that much, but we can dig into it more. Of those emotions, there's also like Pluchik's wheel of emotions. You can see all these emotion wheels. If you Google it, I would talk about fear. I talk about threat. So the emotion that would relate to that would be fear. Most tangibly. Why do I care about threat or fear? Okay, so what is the end state of polarization, right? When we get to extreme, toxic, pernicious, whatever word you want to use, polarization, well, there's 2 end states. It's breakdown of democratic republics and or physical violence related to politics. That's the end state.
Violence is the use of physical force.
Thank you. And so, right, but where does that often come from? It comes from, in many cases, so much fear about the other side that people are willing to break norms. To say, okay, well, maybe some of these norms can take a backseat because we have something that's a really pressing threat right now. Now, so how do you handle those emotions? What are some underlying questions to that? And so some of these are different emotions and distortions. I don't know how to exactly tease them, but one is kind of feeling that everyone on the other side is just the same. It's just stereotyping. But actually, right, each individual has tens of identities and all sorts of different personalities, and people are different from one another. Right? There's a lot of complexity. Another thing is there's a lot of surveys where people think that the other side is, somehow worse morally. They're closed-minded, they're lazy, whatever it is. But there are many stories that can be elevated when there's examples of admiration, right? There's other kinds of feelings that can be brought in that are quite different from fear. There's misperceptions about how different they are, and you can actually show similarities, which I guess could be an emotion of like comforting. And then finally, right, there's the possibility of actually doing things together, as friends and other kinds of relationships, or even tolerating each other in the context of debates, again, which have more positive emotions related to them. And all of these, this complexity, this admiration, similarity, and togetherness can counteract this fear. And so I think that's kind of the next level. If the first question is it threatening? The second question is, to what extent does it show this complexity, lead to this admiration, show the similarity, and show the possibility of togetherness, which, as anyone who knows me, I love mnemonics. And this is a setup to say that it's CAST, casting the other side in a better light, or repairing our politics, I say like putting a cast on it, whatever you like better. And yes, there are a lot of emotions wrapped into that. Some of it are objective, they're perception errors, but there are a lot of emotions, and ultimately these emotions should reduce the fear that we have about the other side.
I think something that strikes me is that, Jessie, a lot of your argument has been that the concept works. And James, a lot of your argument has been that the concept may well work with some caveats, but it is eminently unscalable, at least at the level of the 325 million or so Americans who do exist. I want to bring just a practical question into this. We all know that not all 325 million Americans are even of voting age, much less actually care about politics and anything that anyone in this room would recognize as being like even active people on. We all know that there's something between like 1/10 and 1/3 of Americans are actually civically active in any way, and of that, there's an even smaller percentage that are either deeply polarized or deeply moved enough by various political issues to actually do anything in politics. This is not to completely endorse the Pareto theory of elites as the drivers in modern society, although I do think that is something that there should be more research into the relationship of that and polarization, depolarization, and partisanship. But it is to say, James, absent a mass messaging question, absent like just pumping depolarizing propaganda into the minds of 325 million people, to what degree do you believe, and Jessie, I'm wondering to what degree you think this is true too, to what degree do you think debates inside the elite networks and the format of debate inside the activist networks, so elites, activists, people, I mean, we talk about grass tops and national leaders and stuff, right? But to what degree, if you take all the main structures of American society where debate does not happen, you put debate in either the Greater Angel style or perhaps the public television news hour style, whichever works best. more implicitly into those formats? To what degree do you think that on depolarization for those institutions themselves and thus further down on society, if we do believe that it's institutions that drive the rest of the social kind of organism?
So I think it depends what the discussions and debates are about among these. Oh, are we elites? I don't know, right? I don't know.
The short answer is yes.
Oh. So if those discussions are about how to address polarization at scale in reasonable ways, then yes, those are useful. If they're, but you know, in many cases, okay, so there's various ways to go with this topic. Let's say, in many cases, right, these debates are for, you know, the incentives are wrong, right? The incentives, news media, social media, often electoral systems, point people toward polarization, right? You get more money, there's a greater chance to get more votes by saying polarizing, demonizing things about the other side. So if there are just more opportunities to demonize the other side, then no, that's not going to be very effective. Now, if elites or whatever can figure out ways to reach many people, then I do think it matters. There's a big question that you started it with, not exactly asked it, essentially, how many people have to be reached? This is a very interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
My number is extremely high. Other people might think it's lower. Sometimes the field points to this 3.5% study. That is bogus. What is the 3.5% study? It is a study that says the percentage of a population that physically needs to be out in the streets to overthrow an autocrat. And somehow that has been taken to mean that if we in the depolarization field reach 3.5% of the population, we have won. That's all we need. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Then, since you've probably never heard of that, another thing is just who is being polarized in America today? We have a lot of things, you know, threat perception is not exactly measured often, but we have other variables that we can look at. So affective polarization is something maybe you've heard of. It's sort of, you know, these emotions about the other side. It's often this thermometer scale. The warmest you could feel about them is 100, the coldest you could feel is 0. What do you think about the Republican Party if you're a Democrat or vice versa? And also your own party. And back in the 60s to the late 70s, it was about neutral. It was about 50 for the other party. It's declined, and depending on the you know, the measurement now, it's somewhere between the high teens and maybe the low 30s, right? But it's fallen greatly. And when people have these negative emotions and distortions, they're willing to vote for people who do take pretty aggressive stances against the other side, who are seen as threats. And so I think that, yeah, this is a very broad-based phenomenon. And if mechanisms do not reach the broad base, it's not going to be particularly effective. That said, there can be some activities that do target the, you know, quote unquote elites or leaders and what they say. But if those leaders' incentives are still skewed toward demonizing the other side, or how do I win the primary when most of the people in that primary, right, are like the most extreme voters, well then, okay, you can teach them a few things, but if they're just going to lose their job by doing it, it's not going to get very far.
Jessie?
Well, first of all, I will say I'm glad we have wonkish people crunching this data like you're doing, James. This is great, like this is important, and I actually don't disagree with that. But I come at it from a different angle, which is that, first of all, we live in a revolutionary time in terms of the information technology that we have. I think it's going to take a few generations before we develop norms for how to live healthily when we have the fire hose of polarizing information coming at us all the time, more than we can process, that always is activating our emotions, right? That's too much of the emotions, like I said, versus too much of the intellect. So we have to learn that, but in the meantime, all of us have to endure, because like I said, it's going to be a few generations. So my grenade to lob is that if debates don't depolarize, can Braver Angels as an organization succeed? And I hope the fact that I'm sitting here is a vote of confidence. I believe that it can. And I think that debates are part of that, and all the other things that we have in our toolkit. But, you know, there's one of my favorite passages from one of my favorite speeches, Bobby Kennedy, carved on near here at the Arlington Cemetery at his grave. He talked about, you know, when a man acts in support of an ideal, he sends out a tiny ripple of hope, and those ripples of hope come together and sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression. So yeah, it is elites that need to set this culture, and if we're elites, great, I'm glad we're helping do that. But all of you out there watching at home are here for a reason. You're trying to survive in a super polarized time. Maybe a lot of you are in that great study of like the 7 political groups in America. And there's like the exhausted middle. Maybe you're in the exhausted middle. Maybe you're activists and you just really want to talk things out, but you can't, you know, you're opposing there. Either way, you're trying to survive right now. You can contribute to that culture. You can be a ripple of hope. And I think that by getting people in here, you know, invite people. If you who are here in Washington, D.C., January 11th, please join us. We're going to have a lot of debates regularly, hopefully more than once a month. And just getting that culture out there can be a way to contribute to the culture and survive in this time until we figure out what the heck we're doing with the information technology that we have.
Before we go to questions from the audience, both online and in person here, I do want to hit what I think is probably one of the big quiet fault lines in here, which is the question of the reality of conflict. I'm not actually sure how much consensus there is between you two, or how much disagreement there is between you two on the idea of, are there actual fundamental, like, life and death, I will die, and even more importantly, I will kill for this levels of disagreement among the American population, right? Like things that people have as fundamental, like things that they cannot tolerate real disagreement on. And then also every level of disagreement that's not quite that intense, but like divides that still get progressively more intense. So there's been a long argument that there is absolutely no common ground between Americans, that things are so diverse in every possible way you could slice the pie, that really the only thing keeping the union together is equilibrium. There's also an argument that actually most Americans do agree on most things, and everything else is just semantics and wallpaper. And between those two things, there's different ways. I'm sure you guys fall on different sides of that spectrum. But if we are to take people at their word, which we had to in 2020 and 2021, and we probably will have to in 2024, that there are fundamental, at least believed realities, conflict. Should the process of debate be something that can actually bring out common ground, or should it be like jerry-rigged to bring out common ground? Or should the process of debate be something that should strive to actually heighten and clarify and perhaps solidify, but at the very least clarify real disagreements that aren't going to go away anytime soon? I'm not saying that those things are mutually incompatible, but I'm wondering what you two think on the framework. Like, should debates be things that are meant to have a resolution? Or should debates be something that is meant to, like, exemplify an existing and lasting conflict? What's the way that they should be done if they are to be done?
Are you thinking like, so, I mean, in Braver Angels, there's a different purpose than, I mean, there's a lot of ways.
I want to know what you think about it. Braver Angels does things a certain way, but I want to know what you think.
Well, but in the terms of the mission to depolarize, I mean, it does, there are places where it's just gonna get so extreme that conflict could break out, right? Like it's just, okay, we're gonna have a debate and we're gonna have the chairs, you know, pick a few speakers that are gonna go really well. Like it could get that bad where that's not gonna help anymore, but the question is, are we at that point? And I'm very hopeful that we're not, and that, you know, from what I've seen in the debates I've done, it helps me believe that. Now, I will throw out there, we do put a lot of effort into making sure that the debates run a certain way. They're parliamentary procedure, you address the chair to keep the temperature down. All of this is done to help create a certain camaraderie, certain atmosphere to bring out the best in people. Yeah, I do fear that it's going to be bad. And in 2024, some people are going to be really upset. Do we have a culture that can absorb that zero sum, one team's gonna get elected or the other? And what do we do with the anger and the hurt feelings, and how do we talk about it, or does it fester? And so that is where I think that it could be something that is useful to preserve the union, dare I say.
James?
Yeah, so, okay, you started with the one of the part that you talked about was this poll. Are we really the same? And this is like window dressing, or, are there these irreconcilable differences and almost no common ground, right? Those would be the poles of this continuum. Wow, the answer's in the middle. I mean, so there are a lot of excellent organizations out there, more in common, beyond conflict. There's something just at the University of Maryland, the nonprofit's called Voice of the People, and they've done a lot of survey data. And they show that there are many topics on which Americans have overlaps, but there's still difference, right? No one should argue that there are no differences on average between Republicans and Democrats. That's false. But right, there are more overlaps than people tend to realize. They overestimate these differences. Now, how does this relate to debate? Okay, well, right, I take a pretty extreme position, which is any debate for the general public is an opportunity for content creation. Right, like Jessie, you asked the question, what is the purpose of Braver Angels? Well, Paul and I are on a marketing committee, and I make a very, unusual argument sometimes in the marketing committee, which is this is the organization. This is the entire organization, just to promote content that can actually reduce perceptions of threat of the other side. There's a whole host of other topics about changing incentives, because usually the incentives that relate to debate are skewed the wrong way, right? You want to make money on social media, right? You want to put this up on social media, we do. And it's going to get between 100 and 200 views, right? You want to put up something that's very polarizing, and we probably would do better on YouTube, right? That's sort of the nature of this beast. What is emotionally arousing, politically polarizing content that activates identities is arousing. You can kind of do some with surprise. You're like, whoa, we actually have more in common than we thought. But eventually that wears away, and it can't really compare with abject fear. So in terms of debates, it's maybe a little cynical, but anything that helps to create more content that can go viral, that can help reduce perceptions of threat of the other side, is how they should be made. But in terms of dealing with some kind of crisis situation and having people talk to each other, if there is some precipice that we're talking about, I mean, that's then it wouldn't probably be Braver Angels creating that debate, but who knows? I mean, I guess in theory there could be, but then the stakes would be very high, and then you're talking about kind of things that would happen at like a State Department kind of level, which is not really what Braver Angels has done so far. And yeah, I guess teaching people how to listen and react well would help it in that situation. But that's I guess there would be a little afield from what we've often covered.
I trust that if things got to a State Department level situation, Braver Angels would be doing the same stuff. And I think at that level, James, that some of these vast messaging campaigns that you've been talking about are among the most important things we could be thinking on too. So, well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, from the Department of mass media depolarizationist propaganda on the one hand, to the Department of small depolarizationist death cults who chair debates in their own time. This is another false dichotomy spectrum of the sheer diversity of depolarization work. And it is something that I'm sure we will not resolve anytime soon. But that is one of the reasons why the process of debate can be at least functionally useful as we set up forums like this to do things. So with that, let's go to questions from the audience. Those of us joining from different parts of the country, feel free to chat questions or also raise your hands to vocalize questions. In the meantime, I'm wondering if we have any questions from Max Massa in the back.
Oh, I think there has been broadly observed in America, for sure, and I believe the wider industrialized world, the decline of essentially cross-cutting organization. You know, where people from essentially different walks of life are having to collaborate, communicate, essentially not and perhaps even cohabitate. I am wondering if this trend in the decline of cross-cutting organizations in any way tempers the nature of debate or changes the need for it and the perspective of the panel.
Can you define cross-cutting organizations for the benefit of the panelists in the audience?
So my father was so the classic example from my father's perspective. My father was raised Catholic, and so the Catholic Church was where you had people who were essentially educated middle class sitting alongside working class individuals, sharing time and like pooling resources together. The Catholic Church also back then, since the 1950s, was actually even at that time very ethnically diverse. And so like that was like, in his mind a classic instance of what a cross-cutting organization looked like.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I love about the Brave Rangers debates, and I'm evangelizing here, I know, is just that they are a chance to get out of the echo chamber, to talk to people you wouldn't otherwise talk to. Now, the people who self-select into Brave Angels are a certain type too, so we still have that problem. So bring friends who are skeptical to your next Brave Angels meeting, especially the debates. But yeah, and I'm thinking now too about what James said about getting content out there. It is like virality is one of those things that I think we have to learn how to deal with and not be prisoners of anymore as we go forward. And we're not going to have that anytime soon, right? We have to live with the status quo right now. But that's because, you know, things go viral among certain groups, and whereas other groups may not even know that this is happening, right? We're segregating into, I mean, echo chambers. We all know about echo chambers. And so anything that we can do to try to create a space that is actively countering that. And Brave Rangers is the first step. I think we need to reach out more than what our demographics are, but we're trying. We have a foundation that we could build that on to try to. I love the model of your, you know, multi-ethnic Catholic church. So
yeah, well, you know, what you're talking about reminds me of Robert Putnam, right? Bowling Alone. It's like social capital, and there's also a book called The Big Sword, although a lot of political polarization, you know, where I mean, you can basically draw a straight line based on the density of a neighborhood and how it votes. And I mean, right, it's a very tough thing to try to solve directly. There is someone, I think, who came to the convention who's talking about trying to build social capital and trying to build lots of organizations, you know, that cut across class and race and definitely politics. We're talking about here is really tough. Now, okay, I go into content creation mode to show, you know, kind of people. So, you know, so Jacob Reese, right? How does the other half live, right? I mean, how does someone who isn't in one's bubble actually live? And it doesn't have to be in a social media context. Actually, Braver Angels, right, got its start. The second workshop that it ever hosted was taped and turned into a documentary. And I think, you know, something like that is really good to show people, you know, how other people are not as threatening, right? And I mean, there are these different kind of like internal exchange programs where like high schoolers can go and, you know, right, visit somewhere completely different. But again, right, if it's only going to reach those people, the numbers don't work in my head. So, right, showing how those impact people through some film, you know, documentaries, there's stuff on, scripted content. There's a lot of ways that people can get information that's more than just a social media post that I think can overcome that. Although, yeah, it'd be wonderful, there's all sorts of institutions bloom, but I don't quite know how to get there.
We've got a question. Audience, would you all mind?
We do.
Thank
There we
you.
go. Susan, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Susan. I've been a member of Braver Angels for a few years, and I used to go to a lot of debates, and I then ended up not going to them anymore because it was not satisfactory to me. So, and I haven't been in a couple of years, so maybe they're different now. But the thing that I didn't like was that it did feel polarizing. Part of that, I believe, was because people just came with emotion and with just kind of their point of view. And what I think would have been better in a debate forum would have been experts on different sides that had real facts, because what I experienced in the debates of Braver Angels was that people would say things, but they would not necessarily be factual. And so that is a very difficult thing to counter, to confront. And so it just felt, it was not a good match, it felt like to me. So I think if you're going to do debates, it feels like, I don't know if you've heard of America in One Room or the Stanford Deliberative Democracy, but they do these things where it's different points of view, but from experts that know their stuff. And then there is, very kind of calm conversations, and it actually ends up actually making a difference and is not polarizing, interestingly enough. The thing that I think could work in Braver Angels, if you don't want to go that way, is that we approach it more like, okay, I'm going to say what I think about abortion, and you can tell me what.
Would you mind getting to the question, please?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm sorry, but I guess I want to have you elaborate on what is the goal, really the goal of these debates.
Thank you. Jessie, you want to take that
I
first?
should probably address that. Yeah, and I really respect where you're coming from. And you come from a different perspective, so I'll just share with you what I take away from that, while also saying, like, where I agree with you, where it really resonates is, yeah, when I hear someone say something that I think is just factually inaccurate, yeah, my blood pressure goes up a little bit. I had a very humbling experience just today, someone on the internet, and here I am being a Pollyanna, like, yeah, debate, I'll bring us together. And it's like, oh, I had to get up and get away from the computer. And then I came back, and then I was like, all right, why do you think that? Because that's what I try to practice. But so what is the point? What should we take away? I do think that we should have experts talking about these issues. That should be part of the media landscape. But I think we don't even agree within Braver Angels on who the experts would be and who we trust. That hasn't come up in this panel yet. The idea of trust. And so, as a debate chair, I haven't chaired a debate yet, but I'm going to be chairing one soon, but I've done all the training. So, talking about some examples, people sometimes want to ask the chair to fact check, but we don't do that. It's important that the participants will give a speech to say, well, here's how I see it. And like I said earlier, this shouldn't be focused on facts, but I would invite you instead to have curiosity about, well, where are they getting those facts? Why are those facts resonating with them? Who is this person who maybe is making my blood boil, but why? Why do they trust those people? So for me, when I get angry, and I do, like, I'm not saying that I don't, that's where I go back to, and that's what I take away, that for me, makes it a little easier for me to live in a world that sometimes ticks me off.
The relationship between democracy, people being wrong, and experts is one of the most fascinating parts of discourse culture. And we should actually probably do a forum on that or an APF on that one of these days, but more on that later. James, same question.
Yeah, well, so, yeah, I had a lot of skepticism as well, right? I mean, that's how I kind of came to this discussion where I was like, okay, I'll be sort of the skeptic and I'll talk to someone who's involved in debates and let's see where that goes. But Jessie, the way that you communicated the debates to me, I thought was very impressive. It was really trying to get at emotions, going back to what we were talking before, to learn about people's stories. You were emphasizing to me less about the intellect and more about emotions, not run amok, but at least some emotions that, again, would kind of reduce perceptions of threat. Now, if that's the goal, that would be really cool. Now there's a marketing question that Braver Angels has, because I've been in Braver Angels since 2017, and my understanding was that it was a collective search for truth, which to me is a pretty intellectual statement. And so there may even be, you know, so we'll have a debate about what debates mean, and yeah, I don't know, you know, but if it's more about emotions and it can bring people together, that's great. And yes, I'm very familiar with James Fishkin and deliberative democracy stuff, and that's cool. It's extraordinarily expensive, but again, if it's videotaped and you show to a lot of people that like this can happen, and there's a lot of stuff from another thing at Stanford where it did show people's changes when they're encountering new information. That's called the Strengthening Democracy Challenge. Then that can be impactful to, you know, a wide group of people.
I just want to clarify, collective search for truth is in fact the historical way we've been framing Braver Angels debates. I myself have often tongue-in-cheek, but also semi-seriously said, sitting around in a circle talking about our feelings. So if that's a helpful way to allay others of your concerns.
No, we're joking around. I mean, after you explained it to me, I was like, this is actually like Brene Brown type stuff, but like wrapped in this debate package to like get more people interested.
It's the way you get nerds to talk about their feelings.
Question from the gentleman over here.
Sure, Dan Coan, objectively.
Good to see you again, Dan.
Likewise. So 3 things that I sort of take away is one, that people's claims that are behind the emotions are always beyond themselves. Like they are claiming the universe stuff. People should, the government should. And that to me is an intellectual vulnerability. Like, wow, that's a really big claim. Do you have the substantiation, the justification, the evidence of what have you, to be that wrought around the thing that you were citing? And so I guess the utility of debates is sort of like, can we test that? But I was just wondering sort of like how would you cast part of the depolarization problem, let's say it this way, as just confirmation bias from muck? Like, nobody's had their ideas seriously tested by any sophisticated or layman critique in forever. And would that be like a useful mission? Like, can we just pin the balloon? You're probably wrong. Everybody sit down, right? That kind of thing.
That's actually a really, really interesting question. Jessie, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, that is a really interesting question. And I mentioned I do.
Because you went to the information age, and we're dealing with something radically different.
Yeah.
From my brain to keep up with everything else.
Absolutely. Just to hear someone else question you. And the thing about the Braver Angel space is it is safe. They're doing it as much as we can possibly hope for, right? We're all still human. Out of this, like, here we are together, we have this certain agreement, collective search for truth, talking about our feelings. But I want to bring up an example that I have from a different debate system that is more, they will hiss, they will make comments in the peanut gallery and tell you that, you know, that's stupid. And I just had this experience last week because I'm doing a lot of other debates to get more on this. And so this is not just what happened to you in Braver Angels. However, the fact that
I've never even heard of this kind of style.
it was not a modified parliamentary system. It's just, yeah. And so people are like, oh, that's stupid, right? And later, you know, I was hanging out with these people and laughing, and it was part of the culture that we were going to explore ideas together, and that's what brought us together. And if they call you stupid, it's because you're one of us. So just the intellectual norms are something that I think we should really think about in braver angles. Or again, I don't think we should be calling anyone stupid because a lot of us are here for a different purpose than that. So, you know, try more advanced debates after that if you want to. Try the ones that are more about intellect and if that meets your needs. But yeah, I do think, getting back to your specific question, just having someone friendly who's not going to cancel you, who's not going to call you a bigot, who's not going to call you a moron, just to say, hey, I think that the truth is this. We don't have to agree, but did you even realize that other people see it this way? Would go along, like, it would be a great first step. It wouldn't get us all the way there, but yes, I think you're on something.
Jane, you got something?
Dan, we may have to talk afterward. I'm not sure if I entirely picked up the question. The first half, I mean, I try to think super big, so I can't criticize anyone else for big, far-reaching thoughts, and I'm interested in, distortions like confirmation bias. But again, I'm sorry if I didn't entirely pick up on the question.
There's many strands, and we've looked at them in different ways in different parts of the paper. Right? There's many strands of what you might think of as the depolarizationist intellectual project. One of which is the question of intellectual humility and what that actually means under conditions of high social trust in civil society. I don't think that's anywhere near the totality of that intellectual project, but I do think that's a key role. And I think that's something that we should all be thinking about in the moment as we go on. I saw another question on this side. Liz Chen, Elizabeth.
I think debates, actually, I kind of agree with this questioner about debates can be polarizing because I think they have to be done a certain way, because if I have my own thoughts, and it's not because I think everyone's thoughts are valid. I think my thoughts are right, and I think other people are wrong. I think they might be dangerous. And it doesn't mean, though, that, but this has always been the case. People have always thought, there have always been people who are wrong. And I think the idea that we're doing a debate to prove that some people are wrong, we've always had people who are wrong. And it's never, and polarization is much worse now than it has been. And I think it's because a debate could very well be an internet chat room of people saying wrong things.
That sounds pretty basic to me.
Yes. But I think what would work is kind of like a combination of Max's cross-cutting organization. If it's people that you care about, and like if you're all in church together or something, and you're doing a debate, you'd be like, you're wrong, but I want to keep you around, and this is not that important. So I think, is there some sort of, how would you respond to the idea that debates elevate rightness and wrongness experts and being right in politics above where they should be, and they're not going to work if people just don't care about each other. There could be an idiot in the room, and we shouldn't call people idiots, but you can think that and be like, oh, but I love that idiot, and I'm going to keep talking to them. It doesn't matter how wrong they are. And I feel like some people are going to be wrong, but what we need in America is to care about all people are wrong and to see beyond how badly they debate or how wrong they are.
Yeah, okay, so to me it is primarily what is threat and what is fear. To me, these are a little more emotions than an intellectual project. But in terms of the topics that I covered, and this is something I'll just do right now, how many of them require deep intellect and how many of them don't? Right, so if we're talking about the complexity of an individual or that group, that does not require intellect, right? It just requires people having lots of different, kinds of, people being individuals and having lots of different identities. Right, and then you go to admiration. That's like taking care of other people, showing up for them when they're sick. That doesn't require incredible intellect. Similarity, well, I guess if one thinks that they're incredibly smart and they're not, then I guess that's the difference. But I mean, there can be just agreement, even if the reasons why someone agrees with you are totally ridiculous. They do, ultimately maybe agree. And then finally, can you be friends with them? Well, unless there's friendship that's only based on incredibly high intellectual reasons, then yes, there can be friendship there. So I think a lot of this stuff that can reduce the sense of threat do not have to go through this very highbrow intellectual pathway. But yeah, no, what do the debates do? If the debates actually can reach the emotions, then that's fantastic. If they don't, I mean, yeah, the social psychology would say that this is backwards, because there's something called like similarity attraction theory. We tend to like those who we perceive as more similar to ourselves on important topics. And if the debate is just highlighting the differences, then in general, it's going to pull people apart and have them be more concerned and more fearful or threatened by the other side.
Jessie?
Yeah, well, I will first say that this is why we're gonna have a lot of debates frequently, so that you can come and debate your friends. And there'll be a lot of different topics that are not just the standard ones, so that maybe one week you'll think your friend is totally wrong, and the other you'll be allies. And so there does, I think you're right, like, you need to have some kind of relationship for it really to work. Otherwise, if it's just a one-off, then why would you bother? These are about relationships. To totally and completely irretrievably mark myself as one of those intellectuals, I will toss out there a theory. There's something called the prisoner's dilemma, which maybe some people have heard of. Basically, it's a game theory experiment where if you just play one round, it's better to just stab the other guy in the back. Like, that's always going to be the best payout. But if you play the game over and over and over again, suddenly it becomes better to cooperate. So yeah, that's math proves this. Hello to Professor Robert Axelrod, if he's watching, go blue.
We're going to take one very brief last question, and seeing the lateness of the hour, we'll have to go. But let's go to the gentleman on Zoom. Sir, if you can keep it under 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I hope so. You may have touched on this a bit while I was writing it. Carl Hennigan wrote, "We are all born with infinite wisdom at our fingertips. All you have to do is approach every disagreement, debate, and alternative view of your core beliefs with the sincere and soul-honest desire of being proved partially or completely incorrect." What do you think of this advice, and do you see many people in BA debates who exhibit this attitude to some degree? That's it, thanks.
Actually, Jessie, you're completely right.
I really felt that you made many excellent points.
Great range, everybody. Great range.
I mean, it's good, but if the focus is on emotions, then there's a question of the relevance of the quote. It depends what the goal of the debate is. I mean, I think intellectual humility is good. The concern that I have is actually like a class-based one, because if one, from a position of power tells other people who don't have as much power to be humble, right? It often means shut up. And so that has to be done very delicately. I think with a higher audience, it can work, but just have to figure out when the best timing to say it, how to say it.
Yeah, to be curious about why you might be wrong, to always have that, that lingering little bit of doubt. I would love to instill in everybody, well, not everybody, some people are pathologically self-questioning. So not that, if that's you, don't do this, but most people could use a little bit more doubt, I think. And to phrase that positively, a little more curiosity. So I think that's a great attitude. Try it on when you come to a very rigorous debate. Take it off when you leave if you must, but try it on and see how you feel. Yeah, that's a great point.
On that cheerful note, thank you to both for having been here. Would you both like to take 30 seconds to pitch any? Pitch any? Yeah.
Okay, well, so party at my place. Yeah. So December 6th, we'll have another solutions exchange event. I again will be a panelist, and Luke again will be the moderator. So if you like this, you may want to come to that. If you didn't like it as much, you can skip that part and just go across the street where my house is. And then we have a little flyer, and it'll be a QR code, at least for people here, and maybe we can send it, I don't know, through the system. And so yes, I'm starting my own organization called More Like Us, and we're focused on the information environment and these misperceptions that people tend to have, that research shows that people overestimate differences between political parties, and they do see the other side as more threatening because of this, and this is damaging. So we share a lot of similarities and other ways to reduce the sense of threat, but also try to deal with the underlying incentives, news media, social media, electoral systems that make the information environment so poor. Also, hey, I'll give a shout out to Peter. He's with the Forward Party of Maryland. He has his own kind of debate where we're talking more of it's ranking the problems, trying to ultimately get to solutions, but it is a different type of kind of debating format that may have some success.
Jessie?
Yeah, I hope all of you in this room at least, sorry to be people online, but we'll come on January 11th. We're still working out a venue. It will probably be in Navy Yard, but watch your email. Come to our first debate. We're going to keep doing them regularly. Some topics include exploring our shared sense of reality, populism, the role of empathy, the end of history. So, and some of the more, free speech and the kind of stuff that you otherwise will hear about. We'll have those in there too, but I hope you'll all join us. Mark your calendars, January 11th for the first one.
Thank you to all of the wonderful volunteers in the Brave Rangers DC Alliance. Thank you everybody who joined us tonight in person, and thank you to everybody who joined us tonight online. There will be many more solutions exchange events forthcoming, many more Brave Rangers DC Alliance events and other things to go on. And if any of you happen to be really bored for the next couple of hours and want to hear all about various understandings of law and justice, I have to book it out of here to go chair the national debate tonight on Resolve, what is it? Resolve.
Does the DOJ have credibility to
Resolve the DOJ has the integrity to carry out fair indictments of political figures. So you can find that on Eventbrite, and if you want to see very variables-based action, you're more than welcome to do that. Otherwise, thank you everybody all. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we will see you sometime in the next couple of weeks.